Chicago Bears fans, haters, media, and NFL insiders seem to have strong opinions about Caleb Williams. But where exactly does he rank among other NFL quarterbacks? I did a deep dive on quarterback data since the year 2000, and I am itching to share it here on this episode of the Hallis Huddle.
Justin has lots of great data and insights to get to the bottom of exactly how good Caleb Williams was his rookie year compared to his peers. Make sure you comment below and let us know what you think.
So, Bob, it starts with the kind of disrespect that we talked about in a previous episode where his floor was bust and his ceiling was Jordan Love. And no other quarterback in the quarterback class was labeled bust. They found a player to compare him to. And so I was already doing some research before then, but it's what really got me going, wanting to compare what he did this year to other quarterbacks. Now, let's also remember, and we've talked about this, he did not come into an ideal situation in regards to the coaching staff that ended up firing not just the head coach, but the offensive coordinator mid-season. And in spite of that, he actually put up decent numbers. So if you don't mind, let's take a look at those numbers. All right, so he played all 17 games, completed 351 out of 562 passes, which comes out to a completion percentage of 62.5%. He threw for 3,541 yards. Now, I broke that down per game average because some of the players I'm comparing him to played in 16-game seasons, didn't start the whole time. So that's 208 yards per game, 20 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions, which is a very good ratio. Now, the number we're going to have to talk about is the 68 sacks. And in doing this exercise, I actually figured out what the quarterback rating formula is, so I can calculate those. I still have no idea how they do QBR, but I will tell you this. His sacks has brought down his QBR tremendously. But he had a quarterback rating of 87.8 and a QBR of 46.7. Now, before we even compare this to other people, what is your general thoughts on that stat line, Bob?
I think the context of knowing exactly how rough the season was from a play caller standpoint, 3 offensive coordinators, it looks on the surface better than you would have expected knowing the context, especially that touchdown to interception ratio, 20-6 is pretty impressive. That 68 sacks is equally unimpressive in the absolute wrong direction. And to your point, I'm very well aware that sacks hurt that QBR rating. The way QBR rating works is it's kind of really based on EPA, and taking sacks is sometimes taking a sacks is worse than throwing an interception. So Absolutely. It's just, it really hinders your numbers there. But the completion percentage looks pretty average for what you expect rookies to do. Now, I know he wasn't supposed to be an average rookie. He's supposed to be a generational talent, #1 overall pick, and I'm sure we will get to that some of this later this episode. But all in all, this looks like a pretty good place for a rookie quarterback to start his career at.
Absolutely. And for me, completion percentage is always something I keep my eye on. And I would actually say for rookies, that's a pretty good one. So I told you I did a deep dive. I went back to the year 2000 and I compared him to every single quarterback that played reasonable amount of times in year 1 and year 2. I didn't look at their whole careers because really what I want to look at is he's only played 1 year. Here's what he did up on the screen, and what can we project for year 2? And so there were a few outliers that, really stood out positively. And there are also obviously players who didn't play in those years. So you're not going to hear about Aaron Rodgers on this. You're not even going to hear about Jordan Love. For the fun of it, I did look at Brady, even though he only played 1 game his rookie year. We'll come back to that in a little bit. But the first thing I did, because you just mentioned it, Caleb Williams was the #1 pick. Now, obviously, when you're the #1 pick, you're a quarterback. Expectations are really high. And in most cases, you're going to a crap situation, which we didn't think that about the Bears at the time. At least I didn't. But it kind of showed, he was on a 5-12 team that had to fire their head coach and offensive coordinator. But here's what I did first. Since the year 2000, there have been 18 quarterbacks selected #1 overall, including Caleb Williams. So I looked at the other 17 players and I compared their year 1 and year 2 performances. So that's 34 eligible seasons. Now, if if you look closely, year 1 is in quotation marks, as is year 2. That's because some people were on the J.J. McCarthy plan. Famously, Carson Palmer, for instance, did not play his rookie year. So his year 1 stats was actually year 2 in the NFL. His year 2 was year 3. Why does that matter? They always say if you're in the room, you're still at least learning the playbook. You're learning through watching what's going on. You can't pick up the speed necessarily, but you do still have that experience as a player. So of those 34 seasons, I compared quarterback rating, which tries to take into account your completion percentage, yardage, turnovers, touchdowns, those sort of things. So to me, it does encompass a lot of things. Only 8 were higher than what Williams put up his rookie year. Only 2 were by rookies. Okay, so in 2018, Baker Mayfield had a 93.7 rating. I could go over his stats. I won't go over it right now. In 2020, Joe Burrow, I've heard of him, pretty good quarterback, right? Had an 89.8. That's only 0.1 higher than Caleb Williams. And then the other 6 are all second years. But check this out. I mentioned Carson Palmer. That was actually his 3rd year as a professional. He had a 101.1, quite impressive. Matthew Stafford is on there for 2010, but he only played in 3 games. I thought about eliminating it, but I didn't want to be, cherry picking. Jared Goff, we're going to talk a lot about him on this episode. In his 2nd year, which I really want to highlight, we'll talk about that next, a 100.5. Kyler Murray, another player, as I was doing more and more research, not a bad comp for Caleb Williams, had a 94.3. This is his 2nd year in the NFL. Joe Burrow again. So Joe Burrow as a rookie and as a year 2 was higher than where Caleb Williams is now. And then Trevor Lawrence. And people have a lot of thoughts and opinions about Trevor Lawrence, but he's up there. Now, that means the list of players that aren't on here that it might be kind of notable. Michael Vick, Eli Manning, Alex Smith, Matthew Stafford. He's on there for that year too. Cam Newton, Andrew Luck, Jameis Winston. So he's not a nobody, guys.
And I think what stands out most too is even in this 2nd year, you got 6 guys who had a better quarterback rating than Caleb Williams' rookie, which means there's 11 other number 1 overall picks who had worse quarterback ratings in their 2nd year than Caleb Williams had in his 1st year. Like that's just, times change. The passing game from 18, 20 years ago might not necessarily be the same now, but we were led to believe that Caleb Williams could still project as a bust. And we're saying 11 quarterbacks were worse in their 2nd year than Caleb was in his rookie year. So, I mean, that's just, as much noise as it gets if we're talking about Caleb Williams as a bust.
And to be fair, some of those guys, year 3, 4, 5 went on to have probably Hall of Fame careers in the case of some. So then I did the same thing for top 10. I don't have a slide for that, and I'm not going to go in depth. In fact, viewers, commenters, Hallis Huddlers, after this episode or during this episode, throw in some names that you want to know how they compare. I have the data. I'll comment back and we can have a nice conversation. But then I went through top 10 picks. I also went through 1st round picks and then just all quarterbacks. So I'll throw a couple names just to hear your opinion or something like that. But Matt Ryan, his rookie year was about what Caleb Williams was. And his year 2 was actually a regression, a slight regression. Now, we hope that doesn't happen with Caleb, and I have an explanation why I don't think that will happen. RG3, totally different style of quarterback, but he had a better rookie year, and then not as good of a 2nd year as even where Caleb is now. Justin Herbert, that dude's a stud. Both his years off the charts, right? Big Ben, both his years, I would say, was better than Caleb, but he was an ultimate game manager, if you remember. His attempts were low. His yardage was low. His efficiency was good, though.
He went into a much more stable, ready-to-win position as well with the Pittsburgh Steelers in those years.
Absolutely, and we'll come back to that real quick in the next comparison I want to make on our next slide. Deshaun Watson, very questionable guy in terms of character, but he had some good years in his 1st year and 2nd year. Russell Wilson, and then Dak Prescott, who's another person I think is a better, if you want to say what Caleb Williams' floor might be, to me, maybe he's Dak Prescott. That might be a little too high for a floor, but they should have tried to come up with a name. And that name kind of resonates with me. Now, he's famously well better than guys like Josh Allen, who we know bloomed a little later. CJ Stroud had a great rookie year, regressed a bit. But I want to highlight Jared Goff. So remember, he was on this list already as a person that had a quarterback rating above where Caleb Williams is now in his second year. But I want to talk about a comparison here. You see Jared Goff there wearing the LA Rams uniform. That is actually where he started his career. If people forgot. Now, his rookie year, he had Jeff Fisher as a coach, who's notably one of the worst coaches in terms of all-time records. He's a defensive-minded coach. That OC, Rob Boris, Bob, do you know who that is? I have no clue.
No idea, but I do remember specifically opponents commenting that the Rams were running high school offense.
They were awful. Now, Bears fans, how do you feel about Matt Eberflus and Shane Waldron as a coaching staff to bring a young rookie quarterback in with? It wasn't good, people. Both were in awful situations. However, Jared Goff, year 2, enter first-time head coach Sean McVay. Enter first-time offensive coordinator Matt LaFleur. We've heard these names, right? It's very familiar. You get the hotshot, young, offensive-minded guy who's proven himself as a coordinator. That's Ben Johnson. You have your first-time but considered bright spot offensive coordinator who might have a future as a head coach. Now, I'll admit I did not know anything about Declan Doyle, but everything I'm hearing, he's like that next whiz kid type of guy. I didn't put it on the slide, but they also drafted Cooper Kupp that year. They fixed their offensive line that year. This sounds familiar to me, people. It's what the Bears are doing here in Chicago. Now, Jared Goff in that year 2 was a Pro Bowler. I already said he had a 100.3, I believe, rating. His stats are there. I'm not going to read them off to you. I guess I could in a moment. But his rookie year was dreadful. He was in a bad situation, but he put up numbers like he didn't belong in the NFL. That's not what we saw here in Chicago with Caleb Williams. So what do you think of that comparison, Bob?
I think it's very fair, if nothing else. You have a number 1 overall pick who really struggled. I love the comparison of the defensive-minded head coach who wasn't even that good of a head coach in the first place. And then, an offensive coordinator that struggled. Now, it's kind of funny to say, like, Shane Waldron is probably better than Rob Boris, maybe, but we know how bad he was. But I think it's very fair. And you hope that move to the new coach, new offensive coordinator is going to have that same type of impact. And now if Jared Goff goes from just being absolutely dreadful to Pro Bowl, can we expect a leap of, I know you're going to get to that later on, but a leap from, at least, average-ish quarterback play to superstar quarterback play? Is that in the realm of possibility? But I love this comparison. I think it's a great place to start.
I will say, as I was doing this research, we have to be careful with Pro Bowl. I mean, a lot goes into you're being compared to your peers. So could it be a down year in your conference? Could they have just overlooked someone? Later, we're going to talk about Goff in Detroit, and he had 2 Pro Bowl seasons under Ben Johnson. And I look at that other season, and I'm like, I think that might have been even better than one of his Pro Bowl years. So it's not everything, but to even be in the consideration means you're balling out. And so I hope that's in Caleb Williams' future. Is that in his future in year 2? It's not out of the question. In my research, many guys have done it as rookies. Many guys have done it in year 2. And some of them did it with worse numbers than what we've already seen Williams put up in what you see here on this slide was a bad situation. Now, there's another reason Bears fans should want to compare these 2 quarterbacks. And it's kind of obvious. It's the Ben Johnson effect. Okay, so Jared Goff, we saw, had a good year 2. He was with the Rams. He still went on to play 2 more seasons with the Rams with McVay. So that's good tutelage. That's a good way to learn. He goes to Detroit. Now, he's been in Detroit for 4 years. Only 3 of those were with Ben Johnson calling plays. So those are the ones I isolated on this slide. Now, Jared Goff in 2022, Pro Bowler, 65% completions, 4,400 yards. All of these, by the way, are in full season, 17 games played. So he averaged 261 yards per game, 29 touchdowns, 7 picks. That's a great ratio. That's a 99.3 rating. 2023 did not make the Pro Bowl. 67% completions on 605 attempts, 45 over almost 4,600 yards, 269 per game, actually more than the year prior. 30 touchdowns, a few more picks, 12. But I'll be honest, Bears fan, if Williams is throwing 30, I'll take 12 picks. That's a 97.9 rating. And then just last season, it should be fresh on our mind, made the Pro Bowl again. Yardage went up to the highest of all 3 years to 46.29, 272 per game, 72% completions. That's good scheme. That's getting the ball out. That's taking what's there for you. Can Williams do that? We hope so, but we know Ben Johnson emphasizes it. 37 touchdowns to 12 picks. Get this, people, 111.8 rating. Now, this is in Goff's 8th year in the league, so I'm not saying that experience and those types of things isn't also part of what you're seeing here. But I like that we have a guy that is considered an offensive guru bringing out the best in his quarterback. What do you think of that slide there, Bob?
So what stands out to me, first of all, is the total yards. You say Caleb had 3,500 yards last year. It's like, oh, that's not that great. And then Jared Goff had 4,500. Like, wow, that's an amazing year. But that's like 55 yards per game it works out to, which is basically either one extra drive of, mostly passing yards or one completion per drive per game to get from a meh number yards per game to, something that's like, wow, that's a productive quarterback in the NFL. So it's really, the leap doesn't have to be super huge to get numbers that people are saying he's a bust for, to get to, really high level productivity at the quarterback position. So, it's so attainable, and you just hope that we're, hopefully all these numbers and everything are talking us into it being realistic and not just hopeful.
Well, that's a good point. I tried not to just simply say, wow, look what Goff did with Ben Johnson. Now Caleb's going to do it. That's not quite where I went. But what stood out to me, again, is the completion percentage. All of those percentages are higher than what Caleb put up as a rookie. Now, Goff, if you remember, was much, much worse in terms of accuracy as a rookie. So for me, Bob, you and I, we've talked about this a lot. Rob's not on here, but I know he agrees. The biggest thing right now for Caleb Williams is getting that sack number down.
Absolutely.
That each time you take a sack, it means it was a passing play and you didn't even attempt a throw. Because now you get that number down by, we're both saying 28 sacks as a modest estimate. That doesn't sound modest at all. But if he can get those sacks down by 28, yes, maybe a few of those are throwaways, so you're not going to get your true percentage. But now if you're completing a good percentage of those, because you're not holding on to the ball too long, because the scheme is better, like you just said, that's how the yardage goes up. That's how explosive plays happens. That's how you convert and keep drives alive that lead to points, so your touchdowns go up. Now, we actually believe his interception should go up. Like you said, an interception sometimes is better than a sack. It means at least you were pushing the ball downfield. You were taking a shot. Maybe you get a PI. Maybe your guy comes down and wins the 50-50 ball. That's what Rome Odunze was known for in college. So I think it's time, Bob. I want to reveal my projections for Caleb Williams in year 2. Now, what this takes into account is natural progressions that many quarterbacks, some who are far less productive than him, have made. It also takes into account the Ben Johnson effect that we just saw on the slide prior. So what I did was I put what I believe are fair projections as well as how much of an increase that would be. So again, I'm putting him at 17 games. He was durable enough to withstand 68 sacks. Goff played 17 consistently under Johnson. We hope all the games are mattering. The O-line should keep him upright more. So and you don't want to put injuries into this. Obviously that can happen. We're not talking about that. So completions, 395 out of 600 attempts. Now the 600 attempts is 38 more than he had last year, but we just talked about how at minimum they should be trimming 28 sacks. Now you factor in converting, being aggressive and going for it on 4th down, and then that leads to 2 or 3 or 4 more attempts on a drive. Obviously, it could lead to the drive ending. Well, sometimes that'll happen too. So 38 attempts, again, spread out over 17 games. You're talking barely over 2 attempts per game more. Completions is actually going to go up by even more, which is suggesting that he's going to have a slight bump up in completion percentage. If he could complete nearly 63% of his 62 to 63% of his passes in the dumpster fire that was last season, I think he can go up to 3.3 with a better scheme, better play calling, better O-line, better schematics, and better personnel that he's throwing the ball to.
And that's even with maybe some more throwaways. Hopefully he's avoiding sacks and throwing the ball away. But, the efficiencies gained in the rest of the offense should offset that too. 65 actually seems a little conservative. I'm not trying to say your numbers are wrong here, but I'm looking at Jared Goff right now. His worst completion percentage with Ben Johnson was 65%.
I tried to be conservative, and now I'm just catching myself here. I left a major thing off of my slide here. I apologize. What a lot of people want to see is that the yardage. So I do have him breaking the Bears' not so pleasant record. I have him at 4,385 yards. Now, that might sound, again, as a Bears fan, as some crazy amount. I'll add it here in a second. Actually, I don't think I can, but per game, that's only 258 yards per game. Now, is that earth-shattering? I don't think so.
It's just 50 yards per game. It's 50 yards per game. That's
50 more per game.
Right. A handful more completions.
So, Bears record is 4,000. I have him beating that. Bears record for touchdowns, I believe, is 29. I have him slightly beating that at 31. Now, of all these up here, to me so far, that's probably the hardest one to imagine. That's going up 11. But we're talking about EPA. We're talking about extending drives. We're talking about big plays. So is that reachable? I hope so. Interceptions should go up. You should be taking calculated risks. You should be pushing the ball up the field. And if you throw a few picks, that's fine. We still know overall he likes to protect the ball. That goes back to even his college days. So getting up to 11, that's an increase of 5 interceptions. I put it in red because that's actually kind of a bad thing. But that ratio is almost 3-1. You love to see that. Sacks, 40 is still a lot, people, but it would be tremendous growth. All of this comes out to a quarterback rating of 97.0, which that's not unheard of. We saw some of the names and numbers before, and I honestly just made up QBR. I don't know. That seems ballpark where that would land, and it's quite a big increase, but I know his was crushed by sacks.
Yeah, and 60 is where a pretty good starter is. Excellent, MVP level guys are up near 70. 60 is a good, solid starter in the NFL. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
So I want to hear 2 things from you, Bob. First of all, how realistic are these numbers? And if he comes anywhere near this, how are you feeling about him as a quarterback for your Chicago Bears?
Well, I'll answer the second one first. If he comes anywhere near these, we absolutely, even though we're saying it already, he's not a bust. Right. A name that you mentioned earlier on in this episode, Kyler Murray. I think people, if you said Kyler Murray's name about Caleb Williams this time last year, you'd be disappointed. Now, I don't necessarily think Kyler Murray is a ceiling for what Caleb Williams could be, but if that's a floor, I know you mentioned Dak Prescott, but if that's a floor, then I think that's exactly where we want to be with him. The other part about how realistic are these numbers, they're all dramatic increases. They're all kind of in a small increment per game, but then they add up to dramatic increases. So I know that, we edited this episode to make sure that we can get everything in that we wanted to, but I'd be curious just to know what other year 1 to year 2 jumps were in terms of total statistics. But I think it can happen. I really do. We love what Ben Johnson's capable of doing. We love the offensive line improvements. We love the weapons, at least on the outside and, tight ends. As far as additional attempts and things like that, he might have to work around a weak running game. So there might be some more pass attempts there to kind of replace some short passes with the running game. And on top of it, when you're talking about additional yards per attempt, Ben Johnson's big thing is run after catch from the wide receiver. So a lot of hopeful Caleb's improvements in additional yardage is just going to be from better play design for run after catch. So I think it's all within the realm of possibility. Likelihood for him to attain these numbers, I would say that this is probably at maybe a 90th percentile outcome, 80th percentile outcome. I think we all know the truth is probably somewhere in between always. But even if, he's slightly behind these a little bit, if he gets above 4,000 yards in particular and cuts the sacks down to even 40 or hopefully 36, 38, somewhere in there, then we're talking about a guy who took real year 2 growth. And that's something to be really, really excited about.
So I intentionally did not want to just read out a bunch of stats on this episode because as a viewer, that could be tough to take in. But because we mentioned Kyler Murray so frequently, I do want to just give you a little baseline on him. So I have him and Caleb's rookie years as a wash, and I have Murray's second year as better than Caleb's, which is interesting because you're asking what can you expect as a increase. So if anything, I might give a slight edge to Murray his rookie year. 64.4% completion is a little higher than Caleb's. It was only a 16-game season, but even so, his yards were higher. 37-22, which is 233 per game. 20 touchdowns to 12 picks, kind of similar there. 87.4 rating, which is basically almost the same. Year 2, he bumped up his completion percentage by about 3, which is what I have Williams doing. He bumped up his yardage by 15 yards per game, and it was already a bit above Williams. He went to 26 touchdowns, kept his picks at 12, and ended with a 94.3 rating. So
it's reasonable. Hey, and you house huddlers listening still, if you want a comparison like he just did with me for Kyler Murray, comment below. Let us know what quarterback you want the comparison for, and we'll get back to you.
Now, I have one last thing I want to say, and there's no slide for it, so you got to listen in, folks. Caleb Williams, part of this bust narrative, I think, comes from how well Jaden Daniels played, as well as some of the other people in his 2024 quarterback draft class. Now, first of all, I want to put out there the possibility that this particular class might be special. If you're as old as me, there was like the 1983 draft class. That was Dan Marino, Jim Kelly. I'm leaving a few out. Elway, maybe? There were a bunch. Not Elway? Okay. No. Well, there were certain classes where lots of guys came in, and it's possible this could be one of them. But I will say this. When I compared his numbers to other people from his draft class, sorry, give me 1 second. I mean, notably, there's Jaden Daniels. Obviously, his numbers were through the roof and were better than what we saw out of Caleb Williams. But you look at Drake May. Drake May had slightly better statistical numbers, but he averaged 7 fewer attempts per game. More than 3 fewer completions per game. His percentage was better, but he had 175 yards per game. So we're back to this. Was he more asked to be a game manager? Whereas Caleb Williams was asked to be Superman. Touchdown. Sorry.
Literally, Thomas Brown said, go be Superman.
Yes, exactly. Their touchdown rate was about the same. So for those people who think like Drake May is up here and Caleb Williams is nowhere near, I don't know where that's coming from. Michael Penix is getting talked about in positive ways. He had a much smaller sample size. I think he only played 5 games, but it wasn't too great, people. JJ McCarthy hasn't taken a snap yet. So, and then Bo Nix. He's in a different part of my thing because he wasn't top 10.
Is probably the one that's most interesting to me. His numbers were really good, 3,700 yards, which is an insane number with the 29 touchdowns. But I think it's very important to understand that he came in to a situation that has one of the best offensive coaches in football for the last 20 years in Sean Payton. And the PFF article that we mentioned for the Bears being number 4, and the Broncos were number 2. So he came into a situation with an elite offensive line and elite play calling offensive head coach, which is just a completely different situation.
It's what Williams hopefully has this year. Right. And I don't think if you told me he was going to put up what Bo Nix put up last year, I mean, it's a little bit less than that slide says, but I'd be happy with it. 66% completions on 567 attempts, 222 yards per game, 29 touchdowns to 12 picks, and a 93.3 rating.
Yeah, and 56 QBR. So, I mean, it's not, Caleb at 49 isn't way off at 56.
So it's possible the 2024 draft class is that special class. Not to mention, it's possible a few of those names we just said might have the CJ Stroud sophomore slump coming. We don't know. So I'd like to have this conversation a few more years down the line, but I hope if you're here still listening, one thing that's very clear is Caleb Williams hasn't already entered bust territory. And to me, the arrow is pointing up from where he's at to far beyond anything that should be labeled a bust.
100%. It's just year one. It's part of the story. It's not even close to the entire story. And the first chapter of Caleb Williams' career, better than people are letting on to believe.
Loved it.
All Great job, Justin, man. This was awesome. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thanks, Hallis Huddlers. Hit us up in the comments. Bear down. Claws up.
Ready, break.